3 years ago, and every once in a while you sort of feel the presence, but I don't know whether that's just because you want to.
Clint Eastwood had a super rare car worth $4.5 million just sitting in his garage for 58 years. He bought the Shelby Cobra back in 1965 for only $7,500. The famous car maker Carroll Shelby himself sold it to him. When they fixed it up, they found Shelby's cigarette burns on the seats and secret notes under the hood. Rich car lovers keep trying to buy it, but Clint refuses to part with it, and the reason why will leave you speechless.
Oh my gosh, I don't want to break your leg because I'm heavy.
But I've got to. You're not that heavy, really, and you can come to my office anytime.
Clint Eastwood was born on May 31st, 1930, in San Francisco, California. From the very start, he stood out. He weighed 11 pounds, 6 ounces at birth, the biggest baby ever delivered at St. Francis Hospital at the time. Nurses were so amazed that they called him Samson after the biblical strongman. The story even made it into the local newspaper. It was his first moment in the public eye, though he had no idea he would one day become one of Hollywood's biggest names. His parents, Clinton Eastwood Sr. and Ruth Runner, were middle-class Californians trying to stay afloat during the Great Depression. His father worked as a steelworker and later as a salesman. His mother took factory jobs when needed. Even though times were tough, they provided a stable home for Clint and his younger sister Jeanne, who was born in 1934. The family moved often, searching for better opportunities. These constant relocations shaped Eastwood's independent nature and made him adaptable to change. By 1940, the Eastwoods had settled in Piedmont, California, a wealthy neighborhood near Oakland. It was an exclusive area where minorities were not even allowed to buy homes until the Supreme Court banned racial housing restrictions in 1948. The family owned multiple cars and had access to luxuries like a swimming pool and country club memberships. These were things many families in the Depression could only dream of. Eastwood never finished high school. Some reports say he considered college and thought about studying music, but with his poor grades, that path wasn't realistic. Instead, he went straight into the workforce and took on a series of tough physical jobs that shaped the man he would become. His life took a major turn in 1951 when he was drafted into the Army during the Korean War. He was stationed at Fort Ord, where he worked as a lifeguard. While stationed at Fort Ord, some believed he had a bit of luck on his side. Don Loomis, one of his fellow servicemen, later recalled hearing that Eastwood was dating the daughter of a high-ranking officer. If true, that connection might have helped when names were being considered for assignments. His time in the military brought more than just routine duties. On one trip back from Seattle in 1951, after a secret meeting, he found himself in a fight for survival. He was a passenger on a Douglas A-D bomber when it ran out of fuel and crashed into the ocean near Point Reyes. With nothing but a life raft, he and the pilot swam 2 miles to safety. That near-death experience didn't shake him. He was discharged in February 1953 and soon found himself on a different path. His introduction to Hollywood seemed like fate. A CBS press release for Rawhide later claimed that a Universal International film crew was working at Fort Ord when someone noticed Eastwood and invited him to meet the director. But not everyone agrees on that story. His unauthorized biographer Patrick McGilligan questioned it. Another version, found in Eastwood's official biography, credits a man named Chuck Hill. Hill, who had Hollywood connections, was also stationed at Fort Ord. When he later reconnected with Eastwood in Los Angeles, he used those connections to sneak him into Universal Studios. That led to an introduction to cameraman Irving Glassberg. That meeting opened a door. Glassberg arranged for Eastwood to audition with director Arthur Lubin. At 6 feet 4 inches, Eastwood had a striking appearance, but his acting was another matter. Lubin later said Eastwood was completely untrained. He didn't know where to stand or how to deliver lines, but something about him stood out. Lubin encouraged him to take drama lessons and helped him land a contract in April 1954 for $100 a week. That contract didn't bring instant success. Early on, Eastwood was criticized for being too stiff and speaking through clenched teeth, something that later became his trademark. In May 1954, he auditioned for 6 Bridges to Cross, but director Joseph Pevney turned him down. The rejections kept coming, but he didn't stop. Eventually, director Jack Arnold gave him his first break with a minor role in Revenge of the Creature in 1955. It wasn't much, but it was a start. In 1955, he appeared in Tarantula as a jet pilot, but the role was so brief that it barely registered with audiences. It was the kind of part that came and went in an instant. In 1958, he starred in Ambush at Cimarron Pass, a Western that he later called the lousiest Western ever made. The film followed a group of soldiers trying to survive an ambush, but critics tore it apart for its predictable plot and wooden dialogue. Eastwood sat through the screening, sinking lower into his seat with every scene. By the time the credits rolled, he turned to his wife and told her he was done with acting. He felt so disheartened that he seriously considered quitting. He even thought about going back to school or finding another career. But instead of giving up, he chose to push forward. That decision changed everything. Not long after, CBS cast him as Rowdy Yates in Rawhide, a Western TV series about a cattle drive team. Filming started in Arizona in the summer of 1958, and by early 1959, Rawhide was on the air. Within 3 weeks, it climbed into the top 20 TV ratings. For the first time, Eastwood had steady work and national recognition. His pay jumped to $750 per episode, a huge leap from his earlier earnings. But the job came with challenges. He worked 6 days a week, often filming for 12 hours a day. The schedule was exhausting, but the exposure was invaluable. Even though Rawhide made him famous, Eastwood wasn't happy with the way his character was written. Rowdy Yates was impulsive and often naive, which made Eastwood frustrated. He even called him the idiot of the plains. He wanted to play more serious roles, but the show kept him stuck in a predictable pattern. By 1965, Rawhide had started to decline. Ratings dropped, and CBS canceled it that year. For many actors, losing a major role would have been a career setback. But for Eastwood, it was the opening he had been waiting for. He was ready to move beyond television. Hollywood wasn't offering him the roles he wanted, so he took a risk. That same year, an Italian director named Sergio Leone was looking for a lead actor for his new film, A Fistful of Dollars. The role had already been turned down by big names like Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson. Leone wanted someone with a quiet intensity, someone who didn't need a lot of dialogue to command the screen. Eastwood fit that description perfectly. When he read the script, he saw something different from the clean-cut westerns Hollywood was making. This was a world where heroes weren't always noble, where violence was sudden and brutal. He took the job. A Fistful of Dollars was filmed in Spain on a budget of just $200,000. It was a loose remake of Akira Kurosawa's Yojimbo, but instead of a wandering samurai, it followed a mysterious gunslinger who played 2 rival gangs against each other. Eastwood's character, later known as the Man with No Name, was unlike any Western hero before. He barely spoke. He didn't explain himself. He wore a poncho, chewed on a cigarillo, and let his actions do the talking. The film was released in Italy in 1964, and no one expected much. Then it became a hit. It grossed $14.5 million worldwide and introduced audiences to a new kind of Western. It also launched the spaghetti Western genre, a style that was grittier and more violent than anything Hollywood had made before. With the success of A Fistful of Dollars, a sequel was inevitable. For a Few Dollars More came out in 1965, giving Eastwood's character a partner, Lee Van Cleef's Colonel Mortimer, a bounty hunter seeking revenge. The story was bigger, the action more intense, and the world more developed. Eastwood's presence grew stronger, and by the time The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly was released in 1966, he was a full-fledged movie star. The third film in the trilogy became the most famous. It followed three gunslingers, Eastwood as Blondie, The Good, Lee Van Cleef as Angel Eyes, The Bad, and Eli Wallach as Tuco, The Ugly, as they searched for buried gold during the Civil War. Leone's directing style had evolved, and Ennio Morricone's score made every scene unforgettable. The final showdown, a three-way duel in a graveyard, became one of the most iconic moments in film history. Even though the films made Eastwood a star, his relationship with Leone wasn't always smooth. The director had a habit of dragging out filming, often pushing production past schedule. Language barriers caused frustration on set, with Leone speaking Italian and Eastwood relying on translators. Eastwood also disliked Leone's tendency to give long-winded directions. But despite these challenges, their partnership changed cinema. Leone became one of the most respected filmmakers in the world, and Eastwood left television behind for good. Eastwood's rise as a Western star put him in direct conflict with John Wayne. Wayne had spent decades defining the genre. His cowboys were noble figures who fought for justice. He believed Westerns should tell stories about honor and the American spirit. Eastwood's films were the opposite. They showed a world where survival mattered more than morals. Wayne hated High Plains Drifter, a 1973 Western that Eastwood directed and starred in. It was dark, violent, and had a ghostly revenge story at its core. Wayne wrote Eastwood a letter criticizing the film for being too cynical and straying from what Westerns should represent. He also refused to work with Eastwood on The Hostiles, a project that never got made because he didn't agree with his vision of the genre. One of the biggest differences between them was how they portrayed violence. Wayne had a personal rule. His characters never shot enemies in the back. He believed that cowboys should fight with honor. Eastwood's characters didn't follow that rule. They did what they had to in order to win. That difference symbolized the shift happening in Westerns. Wayne represented the past. Eastwood represented something new. Clint Eastwood became a Hollywood legend when he played Detective Harry Callahan in Dirty Harry, 1971. This wasn't just another cop movie. It came at a time when crime was rising and trust in law enforcement was fading. People wanted a hero who wouldn't hesitate, someone who would take action when the system failed. That's exactly who Callahan was. He didn't care about rules or red tape. He only cared about stopping criminals. Some loved him for it, others feared what he represented. The film was directed by Don Siegel and inspired by the real-life Zodiac murders. Audiences connected with its gritty realism. Callahan wasn't a typical movie cop. He was tough. He was relentless. And he had no patience for bureaucracy. But his methods sparked debate. Some saw Dirty Harry as a dangerous movie that encouraged police brutality. Protesters at the 1972 Academy Awards even carried signs calling it fascist. Still, controversy didn't stop its success. The film made over $36 million on a modest budget. And then there was that one moment. The scene that turned Eastwood into an icon. A bank robbery had just gone down. A wounded criminal lay on the ground as Callahan pointed his .44 Magnum at him. With a cold stare, he delivered the line. "You've got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky?" "Well, do ya, punk?" That one scene changed everything. It became one of the most famous lines in movie history. 12 years later, Eastwood did it again in Sudden Impact, 1983. This time, he walked into a diner during a robbery and aimed his gun at the last man standing. Calm and fearless, he said, "Go ahead. Make my day." That line wasn't just memorable, it became part of American culture. It was quoted in movies, TV shows, and even politics. In 1985, President Ronald Reagan used it in a speech while threatening to veto a tax increase.
No matter how well-intentioned they might be, no matter what their illusions might be, I have my veto pen drawn and ready for any tax increase that Congress might even think of sending up. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
The audience erupted in cheers. The American Film Institute later ranked it 6th on their list of the greatest movie quotes of all time. But Eastwood wasn't just Dirty Harry. He had already proven himself in westerns. High Plains Drifter, 1973, was one of his first major hits after Dirty Harry. He played a mysterious drifter who arrives in a corrupt mining town and takes brutal revenge. It made $15.7 million at the box office and became one of the top-grossing westerns of the decade. Then came The Outlaw Josie Wales, 1976. This time, Eastwood not only starred, but also directed. The film told the story of a Missouri farmer whose family is murdered by Union soldiers during the Civil War. With nothing left, he becomes an outlaw, hunted by the very men who destroyed his life. It was a massive success, making $31.8 million against a budget of just $3.7 million. Decades later, the Library of Congress added it to the National Film Registry for its cultural significance. In 1979, Eastwood reunited with Don Siegel for Escape from Alcatraz, a film based on the real-life prison break of 1962. He played Frank Morris, the mastermind behind the escape. It was tense and gripping, a thriller that kept audiences on edge. The film made $43 million and remains one of the most famous prison escape stories ever told. Even in his later years, Eastwood kept pushing boundaries. In Gran Torino, 2008, he played Walt Kowalski, a Korean War veteran who forms an unlikely bond with a Hmong teenager. It was a story about redemption, but not everyone saw it that way. The film used racial slurs frequently, and some critics argued that it reinforced stereotypes. Bi Vang, the actor who played Thao, later spoke out about how audiences often laughed at the insults instead of understanding the deeper message. Despite the controversy, Gran Torino was a massive success. It made $269 million worldwide on a budget of just $33 million. Some saw it as an honest look at generational and cultural divides. Others felt it missed the mark, but no one could deny its impact. Clint Eastwood didn't just step behind the camera. He took control of it and never let go. His directing career became just as iconic as his acting, earning him Oscars and shaping modern cinema with unforgettable films. In 1992, he directed Unforgiven, a Western that stripped away the myths of the Old West. It told the story of William Money, a retired outlaw forced back into violence. Eastwood played the lead role himself, bringing a quiet intensity to the character. The film won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. Eastwood won his first Oscar for Best Director. Gene Hackman, who played the ruthless sheriff Little Bill Daggett, won Best Supporting Actor It was a film that changed the way people saw Westerns, proving that the genre could be more than just gunfights and heroics. More than a decade later, Eastwood delivered another masterpiece. In 2003, he directed Mystic River, a dark and emotional crime drama. The film followed three childhood friends whose lives were shattered by violence and tragedy. Sean Penn played Jimmy Markham, a father consumed by grief after his daughter was murdered. Tim Robbins played Dave Boyle, a man haunted by a childhood trauma. Both won Academy Awards for their performances. The film was nominated for 6 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director. It was a raw, haunting story that left audiences shaken. Then came $1 Million Baby in 2004. At first, it seemed like a traditional boxing movie. Hilary Swank played Maggie Fitzgerald, an underdog fighter determined to make it to the top. But the story took a heartbreaking turn, becoming a deep exploration of loss and the right to die with dignity. Swank won an Oscar for Best Actress. Morgan Freeman won for Best Supporting Actor. Eastwood won his second Best Director Oscar and also received a nomination for Best Actor. The film won Best Picture at the 77th Academy Awards, cementing his legacy as a director who could tell powerful human stories. Not all of his films were met with universal praise. Some sparked controversy, like Richard Jewell in 2019. It told the true story of a security guard falsely accused of the 1996 Atlanta Olympic bombing. The film came under fire for its portrayal of journalist Kathy Scruggs, suggesting she exchanged sexual favors for information. Her colleagues and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution disputed this, demanding a disclaimer. Warner Brothers defended the film, saying it was based on credible sources. Despite the controversy, the movie highlighted the damage done by media rushes to judgment. Another film that divided audiences was American Sniper in 2014. It told the story of Chris Kyle, a Navy SEAL sniper with 160 confirmed kills. The film was a massive box office hit and earned 6 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture. Some praised it for its gripping portrayal of a soldier's experience. Others criticized it for oversimplifying the Iraq War and failing to explore its deeper complexities. Regardless of opinion, it became one of the highest-grossing war films ever made. Even in his late 80s, Eastwood kept directing. In 2018, he starred in The Mule, a film about an elderly man who becomes a drug courier. It was a mix of drama and humor, exploring themes of regret and redemption. At 91, he directed and starred in Cry Macho in 2021. The film, based on a 1975 novel, had been in development for decades. Actors like Arnold Schwarzenegger had once been attached, but it was Eastwood who finally brought it to life. The story followed a former rodeo star tasked with bringing a young boy across the U.S.-Mexico border. While the film received mixed reviews, it was impressive that Eastwood was still making movies on his own terms. Clint Eastwood's personal life has been as dramatic as the roles he plays on screen. Over the years, he has fathered at least 8 children with 6 different women, though some remained a secret for decades. His biographer, Patrick McGilligan, even suggested the real number might be higher. One child was reportedly conceived while Eastwood was still in high school. His first marriage to Maggie Johnson in 1953 was troubled from the start. Eastwood had multiple affairs, including one that led to the birth of Laurie Murray. She was placed for adoption, and no one knew about her until 2018, when she attended a family event with Eastwood at the age of 64. While still married to Johnson, he had a 14-year relationship with stuntwoman Roxanne Tunis. Their daughter Kimber was born in 1964, but her existence remained hidden from the public until 1989, when the National Enquirer exposed the story. In 1975, Eastwood began dating actress Sandra Locke. At the same time, he secretly fathered 2 children with flight attendant Jocelyn Reeves. Their son, Scott, was born in 1986, and their daughter, Catherine, followed in 1988. Both birth certificates listed "father declined," and Eastwood did not acknowledge them publicly for years. Even now, he has never confirmed the exact number of his children, leaving room for speculation. Among his many affairs, Roxanne Tunis was one of the longest-lasting. They met on the set of Rawhide in 1959 and remained involved until the early 1970s. At the time, Tunis was married but separated, while Eastwood was still with Johnson. Kimber's birth certificate did list Eastwood as her father, and he reportedly supported her financially. But their relationship had its challenges. Kimber later revealed that her father disowned her at one point and even refused to attend her wedding in 1990. Despite this, he stayed close to Tunis for the rest of her life. When she passed away in 2023 at the age of 93, Eastwood was reportedly devastated. His relationship with Sandra Locke was one of the most turbulent. They lived together for over a decade, both personally and professionally connected. She was still legally married to Gordon Lee Anderson, but her real relationship was with Eastwood. She later said he promised she was the love of his life. But in 1989, while she was away filming Impulse, Eastwood had the locks changed on their home and moved her belongings into storage. Locke was stunned. She filed a $70 million palimony lawsuit, accusing him of emotional abuse and breaking their agreement to support her. The case ended with a settlement. She received $450,000 and a production deal at Warner Brothers, which was secretly financed by Eastwood himself. When she discovered the arrangement, she sued him again for fraud in 1996. Their legal battles lasted years. She later described her time with Eastwood as a horror story, saying he manipulated her life and career to keep control over her. Despite everything, she admitted she had loved him deeply, which made the betrayal even harder to accept. After Locke, Eastwood started dating actress Frances Fisher. Their relationship ended in 1995 when she discovered he had fathered 2 children with Jocelyn Reeves while they were together. Fisher was blindsided. She had no idea about the affair and struggled to process the revelation. In 1996, Eastwood married TV anchor Dina Ruiz. Their relationship lasted longer than most of his others, but by 2013, they were having problems. Ruiz turned to an old friend for emotional support, sparking rumors about both partners seeing other people. The divorce was finalized in 2014, but even after their marriage ended, the drama in Eastwood's family didn't stop. In 2024, his daughter Catherine publicly criticized her siblings and former stepmother Dina Ruiz on social media, claiming she was mistreated at family events. Clint Eastwood's love for cars started when he was a teenager at Oakland Technical High School. He took auto mechanic classes and worked hands-on with engines, learning how they functioned. These classes sparked a passion that never faded. Eastwood had a rebellious streak, often saying that all he wanted back then were fast cars and easy women. That might have been an exaggeration, but his love for speed and mechanics was real. By the time he was 15, he was already taking solo road trips across California. He loved the open road long before he ever became a Hollywood star. Those early experiences shaped his personal life and later influenced his films, where cars often played a key role. His first car wasn't flashy. In 1951, he bought a 1949 Chevrolet panel truck for just $25, which would be around $260 today. It was more than just a vehicle. It became his home during his early years in Hollywood, when he was struggling to make ends meet. The truck had a 216 cubic inch Thriftmaster straight six engine that made 90 horsepower. That wasn't much even for the time, but it was reliable. Eastwood modified the truck to make it livable, adding an old mattress in the back and using movie theater curtains as insulation. The 3-speed manual transmission was tough to operate, and he later joked that wrestling with it taught him more about patience than any acting class ever could. Decades later, the truck was restored for $65,000 and remains in his collection as a reminder of his early struggles. Over the years, Eastwood's collection grew into something remarkable. He never stuck to one style. He collected cars that represented different eras and engineering achievements. One of his favorites is a Ferrari 275 GTB. This car is a masterpiece of Italian design with a 3.3-liter V12 engine that makes 280 horsepower. It's elegant and fast, but Eastwood isn't just about European sports cars. He also owns a 1977 Pontiac Trans Am Special Edition, the kind made famous by Smokey and the Bandit. It has a bold black and gold design, a massive Screaming Chicken decal on the hood, and an Oldsmobile 403 V8 engine. He also has rare Chrysler prototypes that never made it to mass production, a sign of his appreciation for automotive history. His collection is diverse, filled with cars that tell a story rather than just sitting in a showroom. Eastwood's love for cars didn't just stay in his garage, it showed up in his films. The best example is the 1972 Ford Gran Torino Sport in Gran Torino. This car, powered by a 351 cubic inch Cobra Jet V8, became a symbol of old-school American craftsmanship. In the film, it represents Walt Kowalski's past, his values, and his connection to a world that's disappearing. Eastwood liked the car so much that he bought it after filming ended. Other vehicles from his collection have appeared in his movies too, including the Pontiac Trans Am in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. For Eastwood, cars weren't just props. They were part of the story. One of his most legendary purchases happened in 1965 while he was starring in Rawhide. He bought a Shelby Cobra 427 SC directly from Carroll Shelby for $7,500. A huge amount at the time, but a bargain considering what the car is worth today. The story behind the purchase makes it even better. When Eastwood took the Cobra for a test drive, Shelby was so impressed with his driving skills that he knocked $1,000 off the price. But there was a catch. Eastwood had to promise to drive it like he stole it. He kept that promise, putting in over 50 track days at Willow Springs Raceway. This wasn't just any Cobra. It was one of only 29 semi-competition models ever built. The SC meant it was originally designed for racing, but was later modified for street use. It had a 427 cubic inch Ford V8 engine making 485 horsepower. In the mid-1960s, that kind of power was almost unheard of. The Cobra could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4.3 seconds and had a top speed of around 165 miles per hour. It was brutally fast, lightweight, and barely street legal. What makes Eastwood's Cobra truly special are the personal details left by Carroll Shelby himself. When the car was restored in the 1990s, mechanics found cigarette burns on the passenger seat, marks left by Shelby, as he watched test drivers push the car to its limits. Under the hood, handwritten notes from Shelby detailed cam timing adjustments used during testing. A hidden compartment under the seat held Shelby's personal stopwatch and timing sheets from early track runs. These details turned Eastwood's Cobra into more than just a rare collector's item. It became a living piece of automotive history. Eastwood has received offers of more than $5 million for the Cobra, but he refuses to sell. To him, it's not about the money. The car represents an era when performance mattered more than regulations, when cars were built for pure speed and excitement. It's a piece of Carroll Shelby's genius, a symbol of Eastwood's love for raw power, and a reminder of a time when both men were at the height of their careers.